Back to the Culture Call on Praise 93.3 with L. Spencer Smith. Our desire is to reach and empower the community by discussing a cross-section of relevant topics from various perspectives that are essential to its growth and interpersonal connections. Be sure to save our call-in number, 205-752-4800. Be sure to install the free Praise 93.3 app so you can send L. Spencer Smith a message or topic idea. Search for WTSK in your app store.
This is the world premiere.
Great morning, great morning, great morning, precious people. You know what time it is. It's time for the Culture Call right here on Praise 93.3 with yours truly, L. Spencer Smith. Yes, it is the place where Tuscaloosa indeed meets the world. Yeah, and for the next 2 hours from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., 2 hours, we're going to be talking a little bit about everything from society to sports, education to economics, from religion to relationships. And of course, as always, we are here to create a safe space to have empowering, provocative, yes, and sometimes controversial conversations. And guess what? You can call in and chat it up with me as we learn together right here. We're on the Culture Call. Want to send a special shout out to Brother Jay leading in. I'm telling you, he's fire in the morning. Yeah, all the way from 5 up until this time. He leads us and gets us ready for an amazing day. Shout out to him. Listen, as I do every show, I want to encourage you to go ahead and if you have not done it already, maybe you're a first-time listener and you've never heard me say this before, so I'm going to give you this one for free. All right? Go to your smart device, your app store, right? Yeah, each phone has one, an Apple or an Android, and search out Praise 93.3 FM. There you will find a free 99 app. It doesn't cost a thing. Go ahead, do yourself a favor and download that app. Download that app. And then guess what? When you get started, you can hear me from all around the world. Wherever you are, you can hear us right here on Praise 93.3. So, hey, I want you to do that for me. Go ahead. And then, it's resourceful because guess what? You can send me a message. You can chat it up there. Yeah, right there on that app. Also, I need you to go ahead and write this email down. Go ahead and send me your public service announcements and your events. So many things, great things are going on in our area, but I want to talk about it. So send it to culturecall.praise@gmail.com. That's culturecall.praise@gmail.com and give me an opportunity to tell everybody, lottie, dottie, potty, soddy, whoever you want, about your church, your organization, your sorority, fraternity, whatever it is, your choir, whatever it is, we want to make sure that whatever program you have, that traffic comes through there, that you want to see people show up in a big way. There is nothing more encouraging than you putting on a program and seeing faces show up. Yeah. And definitely, especially when they say, I heard about it on the Culture Call. Yeah, so send it to us. Again, that is culturecall.praise@gmail.com. And as always, go ahead and keep this number in your files, 205-752-4800. And yes, give us a call. And let us know what you think about the show. Give us your input. Your voice is important. Why? Because we do it better when we do it together. All of this, we've got to do it as a community. That's our whole mission here at the Culture Call, that our community, the black community, will not be late, last, and or lost in anything that's going on. So definitely give me a call, 205-752-4800 and be a part of the conversation. Guess why? Because I want to hear from you. Absolutely. I want to hear from you. So do me a favor. Go ahead. Sit back and relax. Grab you some coffee. You know what we do. Maxwell House or Starbucks. Yeah. And then you can get you some herbal tea, some chamomile if you're trying to chill out, some green tea if you're trying to wake up. Yeah, right? And get you some alkaline water and get down to that cell, detox that body, get down to those cells, and let's have a wonderful morning and get into the culture. Listen, yesterday we started out with something really, really phenomenal, a fantastic topic, and it was about the black church. And I'm telling you, your response to that has been amazing. And what we were talking about yesterday, a challenging moment for the black church. And again, that's my wheelhouse. That's what I do. from day to day. And although this is, I try to make this not a churchy show. Most of the times I do that, like 99% of the times I do it. But I believe it's important for us now to just simply take a moment to posture the black church, not from simply a spiritual mechanism or organism, but something that has central significance, I still believe, in our community. Now, some may not believe that. Some may not believe that. But I believe that most of us in the black community believes that the black church is still central to who we are and what we do, to our identification, to our consciousness, to our conscience. Right? I believe that the black church is still the motivator and the catalyst for the ways that we approach the world and life. It's the way that we hear about what's going on in the community. It's the way that we hear about what's happening in politics and education. All of those pieces come together, yes, right there in the black church. And yet there is a generation that is challenging the black church and the way that it is and the way that it is seen. Its theology and its ideology, the way that it is showing up in the world. It's sociology, right? And they're demanding to understand, as we said on yesterday, for all of these Goliaths that we see, they are looking to the church, just like David did in the middle of it between Saul and his brothers and Goliath. What is the cause? Is there not a cause? There is a generation that is challenging, from the pulpits to the pews, that are we going to just sit here on Sunday morning and hear about Jesus? Or we're going to put our feet to the pavement and actually act upon what we hear for 52 Sundays and sometimes Wednesdays out of the year? I think, as a personal perspective, that's a good idea. I think that in every generation that the church should and must need be challenged. I believe that a certain pressure keeps us current. And when we understand that we're not living, we can't not simply live off the vestiges of what we used to be in terms of the civil rights movement in the early church, black church reformations, at where denominations have been started. And when I say denominations, I'm talking about Methodist, Baptist, Pentecostal, all of those things that were started back in the day. We cannot rest upon the laurels of our history, that we must begin to create and craft the future. We must begin to cultivate a particular voice that speaks to what the hymn writer says, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. And the challenge that I'm presenting today is, are we fulfilling our calling as the black church? First of all, back up, rewind. Do we actually know what our calling as the black church? Now, let me say this. As I begin to approach my centering moment, I think I'll start it off right here, that I take great umbrage and I take great offense to people that simply say, well, it ain't no black church, it ain't no white church, it ain't no Hispanic church, that we are all just one church. First of all, the historical fallacy and lie that is, right? Because it's never just been one church. From the very beginning, it has never just been one church. I mean, from the Western Stream and the Eastern Stream, right? From the Roman Catholic to the Eastern Orthodox Church, it's never been simply one church, right? And especially as we begin to talk about the context of what church is and how it is based, right now, especially, you have to recognize the difference and the diversity within the cultural context of the church, right? And so when someone says, well, there is no black church, there's no white church, they normally do that to silence and hush the cultural and societal voice of mainly the black church, right? To have us silently fall back and amalgamate into this culture that sees no difference, which is a fallacy, sees no color, which is ludicrous, and so that there will not be an activist pushback, because of course, that the whole mindset that they have, that culturally have of blacks, is that we need to be tame, we need to be docile, we need to be quiet, we need to go along to get along and praise the God of America, right? But I mean, that's a part of that cultural ilk and societal, nomenclature that they attempt to put on us. But here is the reality. The reality is that when we look in the text, there is a reason why, Paul writes to the church at Rome, and then the church at Ephesus, and then the church at Thessalonica, then the church at Corinth, and then the church at Colossae, then the church at Philippi. Because what he recognized is that there were differences in each of those churches. When we look in the book of Revelation, we see that John the Revelator begins to receive a message to the 7 churches of Asia Minor, which means, and each of those messages had in each region, they were dealing with a different situation, right? So again, because the construct of race was not created by African people, but yet and still we had to live under that particular denotation, or for years, for centuries, then there was cultivated a thing called what? The black church. And it was in a lot of ways antithetical to what was at that time the white church. At that time, history tells us that the blacks who were allowed to come to church and allowed to worship could not sit where the white brothers and sisters were. They had to sit in the balcony, right? And of course, this is how the AME church got started by Richard Allen. That blacks were praying in the Methodist church, and some whites had an issue with black praying closer to the altar, and they put them out. And so they basically started what was in Philadelphia the AME church with Mother Bethel there. And so there's always been some level of distinguishing against the church, and not against, but within. Yeah, within the church. And so to arrive at this place presently and say that there is no color in church, or there is nothing but one church, it causes us to have to, just like what they're doing in Florida, to rewrite history, because it's never been that. It's never just been one church. I understand it from an ideological perspective, from a spiritual perspective, there is one church, but that's not true, because if that was true, there would be no denomination. Right. You're Baptist, your coworker is Methodist, someone else is United Methodist, African Methodist Episcopal, African Methodist Episcopal Zion, Christian Methodist Episcopal. I mean, we could go a long time. There's National Baptist, Progressive Baptist, American Baptist, Southern Baptist. I mean, you could go Free Will Baptist. It's just a whole lot going on. And so to negate the fact that there is difference really does a disservice to what I think the mission of the church is, and that the mission of the church in each community, the mission of the church to its people. And because that mission is going to begin to formulate a particular message, right? And I think that the church in our community is weakened when we forget that the whole foundation culturally of our church is the fact that we are African Americans. That means that there are some things that we have to say and have to be in front of that creates a particular causation because of, again, our color. Again, I want to say that race is a construct that we did not create. We've had to live under. We've had to submit to the construct that was created in the 14 and the 15, 1600s, right? And so, and then why was it created? To show forth supremacy, right? I mean, come on, we can't just negate that, right? Because when we're talking about what is the mission of the church, that we understand that the mission of the church is to promote Christ, is to share the message of the gospel, to evangelize, to witness to those of the saving grace of Christ Jesus. That's good. That is the mission of the unified church, till we all come into the unity of the faith. So all of us, black, white, red, yellow, should have that same message. However, that the black church who is in the urban area is different even than the black church that's in the rural area. And those are two different messages in that community, different messages, because now the black community has to address poverty, has to address disenfranchisement, has to address certain things, that are not in the white community. They've never had to deal with aggression, microaggression. They never had to address lynching and violence in daily life in the white church, right? Like we did for us, right? They never had to address voting rights. They never had to address public accommodations. They never had to address the law enforcement and the killing of young black men and women. They've never had to address that. So culturally and societally, there is a difference. And that difference is because of the mission, and that mission will begin to determine the message. And so, I refute. You may be listening to me and say, well, it ain't but one church. I get what you're trying to say. I get what you're saying, because factually that is so. But in real time, in culture, in society, we have to begin to acknowledge said diversities, just like Paul did when he was writing different letters to different churches in different regions. To negate that says that you are disqualifying a particular church from its community mission, right? To me, hear me, I pastor black people. Their reality is different. In that church, there are poor people and there are well-to-do people, right? And so there has to be a particular sensitivity and a particular balance to how you begin to address certain things, right? Certain realities exist in how people show up, right? And what this generation is saying is that I believe that the black church cannot lose its distinct messaging in the face of all that is going on in current society, right? There is difference. Let me show you what I mean from a political perspective. You ready? Yeah. Sip you some water. Here it is right here. You and I know that if the former president that we were talking about that had been indicted 4 times was Barack Obama, it would have been, this whole scenario would be different, would be totally different. Alabama would be different. Mississippi would be different. Georgia would be different. South Carolina, Florida would be different. Texas would be different. Louisiana would be different. You see what I'm going with this? Right. There would be the folks that are calling to exonerate and to overlook, right, would be calling to fry him at the stake and be throwing the exact book. What is the difference? I'm talking about, and he wouldn't even got to 4 indictments. The first indictment. See, when we refuse to understand that difference exists in the culture and society, it literally hinders the mission of our church, spiritually, socially, and culturally. I said on yesterday, and I want to push this even more, that every pastor and preacher should also be like Paul, who was a culturalist. That you have to understand not just the kingdom of God and the way that the kingdom of God flows, but you also have to understand what's going on in the culture, what's going on in my world, what's going on with my children at school, what's going on in the medical profession, what's going on in the financial and wealth sector. Because guess what? People live that in real time. Yeah. I know that folks think that we ought to stay in the third heavens and see things that, and hear things that could not be uttered in the earth. But that's not our reality. That's not. Paul still wrote that to the Corinthian church. He didn't say that to the Ephesus church. He didn't say that to the Roman church. Right. And the question I want to put forth from those good old believers who are listening to me this morning is, what is our mission in 2023 and beyond? Because if we're not careful as the black church, hear me now, if we're not careful, we can begin to guard our traditions and our rituals and begin to start preaching to the funeral more than we are preaching to the future. Right? That if we're not identifying and hearing and listening to what the new generation says, what they need, and helping them find and craft solutions. See, here's the deal. I do not think that those of us who are of age, because I think I'm right there in the middle, right? I still think I'm the bridge, right? Right. I refuse to acknowledge that, well, no, I don't have to refuse. I do it all the time. That there are more days behind me than there are ahead of me. I understand that as a natural biological reality. right? But in my mind, I understand that my job now is to take and identify and to begin to train those and teach those, impart into those who will lead in the future. What would our world look like without a black church that has a progressive mission? What will our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren be left with if we're only still doing things the same way of the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s? What happens when we don't bring them to the table to hear what they're dealing with, so that we can, as Paul did, address the current context of the matters of life for them? How can we help them make their lives in the future better? A life, by the way, that many of us may never see. Is the current church thinking about 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, when your favorite pastor would have slipped from time to eternity, and now here comes the new guy, right? What is your response to that? Are we preparing for a solid understanding of what our mission, a continuity of mission and vision that can not only appreciate the past, but also address the context of the future? Absolutely. See, the challenge that we are facing does not mean that we abdicate what we believe. Yes, I believe in Christ and Him crucified. Yeah. You know, a few weeks ago, I was dealing with on social media, and I saw a preponderance of people saying, just preach Jesus, just preach Jesus. And I was like, okay, what does that even mean? I was like, what are you talking about? What are we even saying? Right? Because again, I get it. That sometimes the truth that we have to say offends. And even, listen, people use the Bible, what's in it and what's not in it, as a crutch. See, when we begin to develop and craft our message, this is why when you read the text, most of the authors had other literary devices that they read, and they infused their writings into their writings, right? And it's just like what I said on yesterday. My granddaddy told me that a good preacher, a good pastor, is one that has the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. And from those two literary devices, they begin to minister to the particular generation that they are assigned to, right? That who are the Moseses of our time, the Daniels of our time, the Davids of our time? Who are the Abrahams of our time? Who are the Joshuas of our time, right? Who are they? Have we identified them? Who are the Samsons of our times? You see, because guess what? The text says that we are living epistles read of all men. So that means then that every person that now attends the black church becomes the message. They are part of the messaging, the marketing, the movement of what our assignment is. And that is, as it has always been, especially in this country, to be the voice of justice, to be the voice of, yes, righteousness, of peace, absolutely, to be the voice that stands up for the disenfranchised, to be the voices that stand up for those who do not have a voice for themselves, to be, yes, the voice for the voiceless. As Brittany Packnett Cunningham says, that this is what the black church has always been and what it must continue to be. And that is to be the voice for those who cannot speak, to be the champion for the marginalized, and to be a force for justice. Yes, that, as I said on yesterday, one of the cries, the current cries of our black youth and our black adults, young adults now, is saying, who will stand for everybody in our community? See, because you have to understand that the civil rights movement, as we're documenting history and as we're fighting over history, the black church cannot forget that a prime part of our history was fighting for all black people, no matter how they showed up. Now, some of you are not going to agree with that. And it is, you have the right to your own opinion and maintain the coverage of your conviction. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to tell you what the history is, and then you can kind of figure it out for yourself, Coach Cole. But here's the reality, that in the 50s and the 60s, even in the 70s, the church, the black church, fought for everyone. They fought for the black businessman, the black doctor, the black lawyer, the black teacher, the black preacher, the black child, the black adult. Watch this. They also fought for the black drunk. They fought for the black liar. They fought for the black same gender loving person. They fought for everybody because what they understood is that there is no message of Jesus Christ that can ever change and transform and deliver, which is another message altogether, right? If we can't keep each other alive, if there is an extermination or if there's an attack on one of us, then there's an attack on all of us. And our message is no good if we do not defend everybody, how they show up. I think sometimes, and this is not to wax preachorial, this is not to get a preachment in here, but I think sometimes we negate the power of God's love. We negate the power of Christ when we look at people in their present condition and think that they are not worth saving or they cannot change and transform. Let me borrow a word from the text from Paul. And such were some of you. That before you get on your high horse and before you get on your pious religious, horse and ride it around town, crying loud and spare not, please remember where you were brought from. Please remember what God delivered you from and how people loved you in. Please remember how long it took you to just get some common sense. Think about it. Look at the history. Look at your own rap sheet and how your rap sheet was transformed into a resume because nobody ran you out of the black church. Nobody ran you away. And if you were ran away from a church, you don't ever need to go back there again. You don't. I said it. And I stand 10 toes down on that because that is not Christ. That's not the church that Christ is building. And we have to watch out for the duplicity of how we stand for some and then shun others. That if we say whosoever will, let them come, right? If that's what we say, then that's what we should live by. And if we preach, it is by the preaching of the gospel that men are saved. That's what the text says. That's what I believe, that as we preach God, as we preach what he's done, as we preach Christ, as we do all of that, guess what? You have no clue and idea who's sitting in the pew that's being changed by the words that's being preached. Not your words, not my words, not conjecture, not insults. No, but a word that validates the dignity of their humanity however they show up. And if you believe in the transformative power of what is you're saying and the atmosphere that's being created, then guess what? Change is going to come. It might be a long time coming. Absolutely. But if we love, remember, the text says love covers a multitude. And while we're doing that, the internal work inside of the four walls, when we step outside of the four walls, we ought to be defending every life, every person, no matter how they show up. We may not agree theologically with their choices. We may not agree theologically with their lifestyle, right? Yeah. But I've got to make sure that person lives. I got to make sure that person is treated with dignity. They do not deserve to be cast underfoot. We cannot practice the Western mindset of separating people and being supreme to people who are not like us. Right? You have to understand. I'm not different. I'm not different because I'm better. It's just that I'm better because I'm different, and the difference is better. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that I only say that as a portion of my faith, but I am in human style no different than the person right now who's struggling in an addiction. Me and all of my pastoral self, me and all of this I am no different than the young man, young woman who's struggling trying to get off meth and opioids. I am no different than the single parent that's trying to figure out how they're going to feed their kids. Yeah, I'm no different than that. And it is my job, my mission, my message to tell them that you are accepted and you are fully loved by God, and not just by him, but by me too. Can we do that, church? Is that still our message? Yeah. Listen, that's my centering moment. Listen, we're going to have a good old time. Go ahead and get you a sip of tea or something, because I know you might need one after that centering moment. But guess what? Keep it right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith, Praise 93.3. We've got a lot to go. Don't miss it.
This is the world premiere.
And we are back right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith, Praise 93.3 FM. That's right. It's the place where Tuscaloosa meets the world. And I'm telling you, we're having a powerful, powerful conversation on this morning. We started it yesterday. Yeah, but we're continuing it today. The Black church and its importance in a changing world. The Black church and its importance in a changing world. What is funny to me is that many people are like, man, Pastor, you talking about like that about the church? Like what? What are you talking about? I don't think it's offensive. I think who better to talk about the church than the pastor, than a pastor, right? I think that's the best place, the best person, because we see it every day in and out. And we know, I still consider myself to be a young man, a young pastor, and pastoring a vibrant congregation. But here is the reality that each church, mine and yours included, has to, I think, annually really reevaluate its cause and its mission. And because those will determine the message. Those will determine the messages that we preach to the community. That one of the things that we have to get out of is in the Black church is this escapist mentality. What do you mean escapist mentality? That, all we really preach about is, he's coming back and it's going to be a pie in the sky and, we're going to walk around heaven all day. And I get it. Yeah. I mean, and it's going to get better than, because there is a place, of an uncloudy day. I get it all. I mean, I have been hearing it all of my life. And what I've come to reckon is that he may not come in my lifetime. If for those who believe in the whole idea of the rapture and all of that, he may not come in my lifetime. But just like he spoke to the disciples in the book of Acts, that's not even his prerogative, and neither should it be my prerogative. My prerogative is that to receive the power that he's given me and the authority and be a witness. Be willing to die for what you believe. Be willing to speak it and communicate it. Be willing to stand for everybody, everywhere, in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the utmost parts of the earth. I think when we begin to look at that from a Black church perspective, that particular mission, when we look at it from that idea, understand that Jerusalem, yes, is at home. Judea is like our city, but Samaria is other folks. It's the other folks that we have to witness and minister to other folks. Part of our messaging has to deal with the complexity and the contrast of other folks, and that ultimately the uttermost parts of the world. It's not just location, but it's also demographics. That we have to reevaluate our message to make sure that, yes, first of all can hear, the whole world. But if the whole world can hear, but the community doesn't hear, and the folks that go to your church not hearing, then you might need to reevaluate your message. If the whole world can hear, but what you're saying is not addressing the real existential needs and realities of the people who attend there, if you're not addressing the life choices of the people that attend it, then you need to go back and revisit your message. I really sincerely believe that, because that message will be the catalyst for the change in the lives of people. And those people will be the catalyst for change in the community. That when they leave church and go home, it's a system of learning. It's a system of creating what the Greeks call an oikos, a household, an economy, right? And that's what it is, a system of living that the message has to be on point for them to deal with the realities in which they live. Now, within the context of that, then you have to know about economics. You do have to know about family relationships. You do have to know about parents rearing children and their responsibility. What is a child's responsibility to the parent? You have to be able to say certain things concerning, intimacy and sexuality. You do have to understand. It just can't be at the cross. I understand. But the cross has opened up a possibility for us to address things. Now that we have come to the cross, what should life look like? What should we be about? Right? That the Bible doesn't end with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John. No. It deals with some life situations. And yes, we have to be bold enough to talk about those from our community, and we should be learned about it. That's why I say you have to be a part of a community of people that builds family, a community of people that was essential at the beginning of the origin of the church in the book of Acts, and that is essential for the black church, that we build fellowship, that we build family, right? In a world now of virtuality, in a world now where I don't have to come, I can sit in my bed with my curlers or my pajamas on, drinking my coffee, eating my bacon, and see Rev and them at the church. Yeah, that's not how. I understand the times had dictated that, right? But here is this. You get up every morning to go to work with a diverse amount of people that you really don't know. You get up every morning, wash your face. Yes, you do. Put on your clothes, and you go and spend at least 8 to 10 hours with people who may not even believe like you, may not have your same value, or even see you as a full person. And yet you don't miss that any day. And this virtual space that is going on in church right now, especially in the black church, oh, I don't feel like it. I'll sit here. No, there's a context missing. We thrive as black people. We learn and thrive in two ways: kinesthetically and relationally. Kinesthetically means that we are moving people, that we are mobile people, that we clap our hands, that we say amen. It's the call and response. That originates from us, right? That there has to be activity. We shout when we get happy. We get loud with the preacher. Right? We do touch our neighbors. We do all of that. It's a part of our culture. There's nothing spiritual to that. There's nothing to say that if you don't do that, you're going to the abyss or you're possessed. No, it has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's a part of our culture. It's a part of how we build family. That kinesthetic thing that, yes, we dance. We do all of that in our church. That's what we do. That's how we create relationships. That's how we create unity. That's how we create, watch this, common unity, or what we would call community. Right? And not only are we kinesthetic, but we are relational. That means that we begin to adopt each other in each other's family. We don't just go to church and just sit by people, but we build relationships. We build friendships. We build brotherhoods and sisterhoods. We eat together. We go out together outside of church, right? And so we build a whole system of family. So not only are we mobile and not only are we energetic, but we also build family. And that's part of our messaging as well. That's part of the message in context. Now, for a lot of people, that changed during the 50s and the 60s because they were attempting at that time to show that African Americans could be dignified and educated and intelligent. And so we're not doing this loud. It's going to be silent, because we're trying to replicate, because we were trying to gain acceptance by the majority culture. Right. But deep on the inside of us, see, watch this. When we go to parties, we party. We go to the ball game, we shout, we scream, we do all that. We get excited. But the whole idea is these people are not seriously spiritual people, seriously moral people, because when they go to church, they cuts up. They have Baptist fits and Pentecostal dances, Pentecostal praise breaks. That's what they do. And so a lot of churches took that out because they didn't understand it. But what you don't know is that all of that, our kinesthetic and our relational modality, is how we are as a people. It has something to say about our messaging every week. It has something to say about our messaging to the culture, to the society. You mean all that has happened to these people and they still praise, they still build family, they still come, they still defend each other, they still take out white chairs and fight just if you mess with one of us? Yes, that's what the community, and we learned that in church. Absolutely. Marching together, cooking together. Yeah, absolutely. Saying amen. There is nothing more euphoric than being in a church that has built community, that has a relationship with the preacher and the pastor. And when he's preaching or when the choir is singing, and that church moves in one system, one synergistic move together. Do you know how much of a message that is to the world, to our young people, to the next generation? And then they would leave and then they would organize meetings. They would go and they were teachers and they were doctors and they had businesses. See, that's messaging. All of that is messaging that we leave on the table. See, that these people have a connection. These people, it's almost, again, like the historical context when they said the God above the boat, of the slaveholders above the boat, can't be the God of the same folks that are under the boat, that are singing hymns and singing tribal songs and just to get by. That when you understand that there were Christians and Muslims that were under the boat, right? That they were surviving together, getting the transatlantic slave trade. See, that's nothing new to us. That even in the pit of horrible despair, we will come together. That's a part of our whole thing, right? And so the context of our 2023 and beyond vision as the Black church, if we're going to really be important in a changing world, guess what? You can't say, oh, Lord, the world is changing. You have to change it like, oh, wow, the world is changing. You have to begin to get out in front of that and not see that change as dystopian against you. That is a trope that was created. Yeah, that was a created trope to make us have this particular pessimistic view of the world. Is there evil in the world? Yes. Is there still racism in the world? Yes. Is there poverty and lack in the world? Absolutely. Is there sickness and disease? You better know it. However, our exuberance and our excitement sent out a message of hope and expectation. And one of the things that the Black church cannot afford to lose, especially in this post-pandemic future area, this post-modern era of relativity and rationality and humanism, what we cannot do is lose our hope and our expectation, because that is a part of the inheritance of the next generation. If we get dystopian about our communities and all we want to do is gather in our church and then release and then no activation from the people, right? If we gather and no change in transformation in the areas where our churches are, then there's a problem. And that's not, let me just back up, because that is not even just the regard of one person, because normally they put transformation and change on the pastor. That's not how it was back in the day, right? We're in the day where pastors are superstars now and they're this and that. And I get all of that. I understand the context of that. But herein lies the reality that back in the day when my granddaddy and all of them were preaching and pastoring, it was everybody. They understood that they had a leader, but everybody knew that they had a part in creating change and transformation in their particular communities. Yes. That they knew that I couldn't just sit by. I heard what Reb say, and Reb challenged us. Absolutely. I could not just do that by myself. And so this is what our assignment is, and as we clarify the message for the next generation. Yeah. Now, let me just say this, that I'm taking us on a slow walk because I understand that there are a lot of sacred cows that probably need to be, slaughtered and barbecued to make some good steaks, you see, that we deal with, and some old wives' tales and some traditional things that really have had its day. But everything is not lost from the former, right? The former has a lesson to teach the future. Let me say that again, Culture Call, because I don't think y'all heard me. I said that the former has lessons to teach the future. And the future would best pay attention to how the former actually is doing this thing, right? That they came together and the message was not lost because of that unity. That, listen, we as the generations can no longer fight each other. We can no longer be like, well, they don't know what I'm doing. This don't work today. You don't know what works. You don't know what works yet. There's nothing like sitting at the feet of a sage. But then the sage always learns because he's always listening to the future. He's not only just posturing his ear to the past, but he's also posturing his ear to what is to come. That's the brilliance of Simeon and Anna in the text. That, yes, they were older people, but what kept them alive and kept them moving forward is that they had an expectation and a hope to see the born Messiah. Right. And see, that is something that is needed. That, yeah, as the older generation, yes, we have wisdom. We have strategy. We know how to build. We know how to do all of that. Yes, but the younger people have energy. They have insight into the current context and to the current challenges. And what would happen if we would meld together? What would happen if we would come together? What would happen if we actually would sit down and listen to each other? I wonder what would go on there. I wonder what would take place. I wonder how our communities would be different. I wonder how much would we learn from each other about our particular assignments, And I don't know about your church, but in our church, we have what we call church mothers, church fathers. We do that. And when I grew up, especially when I grew up, the church mothers would call, if there was someone, they would call you to the side and give you instruction. Now, some were a little mean, because I knew one that was mean as 10 rattlesnakes in a barrel. But then there was some that was so sweet and nice, and they will offer you a piece of candy, but you're going to get that wisdom first as you suck on that mint, right? Or that butterscotch, right? And they will always look out for you. They will offer you wisdom for your future. They will always say, hey, I know you're going to be great, but here is what you need to do. Here is what, I saw you over there doing XYZ and XYZ, but you got to be careful. Make sure you do XYZ, right? And then when I became a preacher at 18, I started preaching to them, and I got to understand after church, they would come and tell me, guess what, young man, I learned so much from you today. I ain't had no schooling, but I feel like I've been to school today. That's how generations connect with each other. That's going to be the survival of our people. I believe, that the black church holds the secret, if it's even a secret, of the survival of the next generation of our people. But we've got to get our heads out of the perspective sands of our own times and begin to connect with each other and share a message. Share a message that it includes, family does include all of us. Listen, don't forget to hit me up, 205-752-4800, or hit me up on the app. Let me know what you're thinking. I want to hear from you. Whether the black church is still important in this changing world. Got much more to come. Sit right there. Go ahead and get you a piece of bacon or some eggs. We'll be right back. Don't miss it.
This is the world premiere.
And we are back right here on the Culture Call. It's the top of the hour and some change, 11 a.m. on this beautiful day. And I'm telling you, we're having a blast right here on the Culture Call. Thank you so much for tuning in to this hour. I'm telling you, it's only going to get better and better. Those of you who are hitting me up on the app and haven't called yet, but you hit me up on the app, and I appreciate it, And those of you who are at work and saying, Bishop, I wish I could call in, but I can't. But listen, here's what I think. Thank you for addressing the whole the issue of the black church and, what the black church should be. I think we don't do a good job at clarifying our mission a lot of times. And I think as a pastor, can I just be honest, that I think we think folks should just know, right? That folks should just know what we are about and what our mission is. Not only inside of the church, but also what should our assignment be in the communities in which we live. And I think that's been my heart cry. That's been my wheelhouse for years, to not just be to create a system of understanding that the black church in particular should not just be a one-man show that simply reveres and honors the pastor, because I think she should be, but that we deal with the honor among all of us, that no matter what kind of position or titular, a function you have, that we begin to honor. Paul says it like this. He said that those uncomely parts is what we bestow more honor upon. And I think that's important, that as we talk about whether we are relevant in the community or not, I think that we have to have an understanding of really what that means, and really how we begin to honor each other's perspectives, and more than perspectives, each other's person. Right. That I'm not just a thing that has thoughts and ideals about some things, but no, I am an actual person. I'm an actual living, breathing, feeling, sensing person that houses a worshiper on the inside. I think that's very important. Not only that, I think that as we begin to build this whole voice sing of the community, or toward the community, within the community, that we need to consider some things. We need to consider some toxicities, right, that we purport as the black church that need to be addressed. We do. We need to. Again, this is not Bible study, and I'm not going to even approach it from that way. Because I listen to a lot of things that I don't struggle with. I understand that my other brothers and sisters struggle with. So, in part of that, it is because of my platform. It is my struggle as well, because until all of us are free, not one of us are free. And I really believe that. And one of the things that, again, as I listen to the coming culture, the people who are taking over the church, and when I say taking over, the people who will become the leaders, that sounds better. That sounded much better. There is no mutiny. There is no January 6th going on in the church. So calm down. That's definitely not what I'm saying, Culture Call. So that part. But what I am saying, that there is a generation that's going to come that has innovation, that they see things from a different perspective. Yes, they love the Lord, but they see serving him in a different context and a different way, perhaps, than what we served. Now, unless they've been trained to be old souls, that their way that they worship is not their own reality, but it's borrowed from generations past. Because there are some people that are young people, but they've been taught in an old way, and they reflect that old kind of modality. I get it. I understand it. There are 20-year-old men in church that sound like 70-year-old deacons. I understand all of that. So I don't make slight of that, because quite frankly, that's where I've come from. I came from systems and churches like that they grew us up as young men to reflect their old nature and to maintain their old culture. But there is another generation coming, and that's rediscovering the position of the church in both some good and perhaps even some what we would consider bad ways. And when I say that because we have to begin to think about what will be the viability of Mount Zion in 2030, 2040. What would be the viability of Impact Nation 2030, 2040? Yeah. What will be the viability of Mount Bethel in 2030, 2040, right? Which is, quite frankly, right around the corner. It is not as far off as we may think it is, So we have to begin to bring those voices to the table and hear and listen and describe and talk about and begin to understand, how do we not lose our cultural efficacy? How do we not lose our cultural roots so that we will still be appealing to the African American community, that we will still be reflective of the African American community, and yet be progressive, and yet be forward moving, and yet be a source, a resource in the current generation toward the future. And that's something very important, And when I begin to talk about this whole idea of mission and cause, that, a lot of people may be rooted and so grounded in what they have thought that they don't understand that what they thought was in a different context, was in a different cultural context. At the first half of the show, I talked to you about Paul addressing particular churches, particular cultural issues that was happening in every church. And I think that is very important, because what has happened in a lot of instances is that what he was talking about culturally has been taken out contextually and being tried to be applied to today's culture. A lot of what he was talking about in Rome being tried to apply to today's culture, or Corinth. Now, not that I'm saying that there is no continuity of some levels of context, even though it was written to a particular culture. I think, however, that that the culture must be investigated. It must be a part, here's this word, must be part of our hermeneutic. It must be a part of our explaining or interpreting the text, right? And I think that's very important as the black church. I think that is important because the black church is a result of disenfranchisement. Got it? The black church is a result of twisted, of misinterpretation, maltranslation. That's the thing that birthed the black church in this country, right? That it was because of disenfranchisement, and we knew that disenfranchisement, which they tried to apply biblical, which we now know and always knew was simply cultural, that they tried to apply it, and give some kind of biblical undergirding, right? So they read something in the Old Testament, and then they talked about interracial marriaging. That's the full context of what that was talking about, had nothing to do with black or white. Because again, there was no race at that time. You see what I'm saying? There was no race at that time. So to apply that scripture is to modern day understanding or modern day culture is way off, right? But see, the Bible says these people. No. You have to understand, God was crafting a new people unto Himself out of Egypt. He was leading them to the promised land, which was in Canaan. They had certain practices in Canaan that God did not want His people, the Hebrews, the coming Israelites, to perform. And so He says, don't allow your sons and your daughters to go a-whoring, that's the word they use, after the people, and tear down their gods. And don't do what they are doing, right? That was the whole idea of worship. It was a centering piece of worship. Because again, why did He bring them out? To worship Him at the tent of meeting. We are going to get into the wilderness so that the people who are delivered can now be developed by meeting Me. That was the text. That's in the book. But there are people that were in this country that took it and said, well, black and white shouldn't worship together. Black and white shouldn't marry. Black and white, all of these different kinds of things that they tried to cherry pick to create laws, cultural laws, or create consistent laws that had absolutely nothing to do with the context of what it was written for, right? And so, that went along, and that had to be changed and overturned. And there's still some churches that still preach that, still teach it out of order, bad interpretation, and yet they believe it. Let me say it again. And yet they believe it, right? That in the Old Testament, there are literally, there are no white people in the Old Testament. The geography of the land will dictate that. I mean, even today's geography would dictate that. We don't see a Caucasian presence until the New Testament. Right? Right? So all those people had a particular melanated skin and hues that they were dealing with. Okay, so I mean, it is what it is. How we want to, geopoliticize that, that's fine. I know Hollywood tried to make Charlton Heston Moses, but no. I know Hollywood tries to make, all these people, Caucasian. I get it. I understand it, but that's propaganda. That's not facts. No. Just the geography would tell you that. Right? And so there was no black people marrying white people in the Bible. There was none of that. None of it. Right? Now, why are you saying this, El? Why are you going this way, Bishop? Glad that you asked me. Because one of the things that I think is very important is that this book has to be held in contextuality. This book has to be held in contextuality, especially as we move forward and understanding what our importance and what our messaging is in the black church. We have to understand what that messaging is. And so when we understand from a cultural perspective certain ideas, that's why I said the church in the urban centers are not reflective or are not culturally understanding the church in the rural centers. You feel what I'm saying? That the struggles of one area are not the struggles of another area. I think that's very, very important. Right. And so that if you don't understand that, you'll be trying to preach in New York, in Harlem, the same cultural context of that which is going on in Utah, Boulder, Alabama. Yeah. And see, I think that's something very, very important. I think that is something that we need to know as we talk about messaging in this hour, that the culture has changed. Now, I understand the text doesn't change. I get that. I understand it. But what culturally do we need to be addressing? What culturally, as the black church, and I'm sticking on that, do we need to be addressing? I think that's very, very important. What nuances of what has changed in the culture? What is going on in the culture? How do we equip the people in the culture now, today, 2023 and beyond? How do we equip them to be who they were purposed and designed to be? That's what I'm talking about. That's where relevancy comes in. Yeah, that's where the ideas of thinking and really contemplating as we read. One of the things that one of my friends, Dr. Jamal Bryant, he preaches from a whole idea and created there, especially in Atlanta at New Birth. He's created his whole spiel is about using the text to address cultural context. What's happening in the culture? I think that's important. That yes, we need to be talking about what happened in Montgomery. Yes, we need to be talking about what's going on with affirmative action. Yes, we need to be talking about what's happening in abortion. Preach Jesus. Rev, why you got to just preach that? Because we're not just preaching Jesus, but we're also preaching like him. Like him. That means he would use certain contexts and certain issues of the day and amplify it to point to the kingdom of God. Right? And so that's important for us. That what's going on, we need to talk about and address pregnancy out of wedlock. We don't just need the young lady to come to the front of the church and repent to everybody, let the guy go free, and then sit her back and move her from out of ministry, sit her in the back until she has the baby and has her apologizing to the church. That's not, no. First of all, there is no biblical reference for that, number one. But number two, we need to gain an understanding of how to teach that young girl what was going on. What is her journey? What brought her here? I think the black church in our community, or the churches in our community, have to begin to take that journey now. That's right. That we've got to take the journey. What led her there? Where is the young man? What is their relationship? How will she be provided for? What is her relationship with her parents? Yeah. See, we have to address all of that. We have to talk about voting and showing up for our civic duty, right? As a part of our context of being believers, right? We've got to talk about morality and ethics. We got to talk about finances and wealth. Yeah, we have to talk about prosperity, because one of the portions of the text in Isaiah 61 says, and the poor, and in Luke, the poor have the gospel preached to them. That means, and when you reach that word, it's not just poor in spirit, but it's talking about poor in every area of their lives. That means that people who are poor, that are not in financially, in a stable place, should come to the church, and we have from both the pulpit and other resources that can address their needs. I'm talking about cause. I'm talking about mission. I'm talking about message. That our message to them should not be after a while. It shouldn't be, when you get over yonder. No, because that young mother, that young father have children to feed. And they just laid him off at Mercedes. So then what is our message to him? Hold on, keep the faith. Oh, yeah, okay, we got that part. But what else? What else should be provided? Should there be something else provided? Right. Should there be something else provided? Yeah. See, I think if we don't understand that, we're going to miss out on a tremendous opportunity of not only ministry, but also mission and message. Because what are we saying? What are we saying? And this is the whole thing about cultural context, because I remember years ago, I don't hear it too much now. It's still a lot of chatter on social media that says that, but they're looking at preachers and all of them living in your big house and driving in your cars, and your community is impoverished. The people that go to your church don't have food to eat, can't keep their light bills on. Well, see, now that's an imbalance. That's an imbalance. Because not one person shouldn't be the only person prospering. But not only is that an imbalance, now you have to investigate and take the journey of that imbalance. Hope you understand what I'm talking about. You got to see, okay, what's happening? What's going on? How are we budgeting? Do we have savings? Are we living just, off of cash? What is the resolve? I mean, what are we doing? We got to figure out how we got to teach and train how to build strong families and how to establish wealth facilitation. And what are the levels of wealth? Yeah, emotional wealth, financial wealth, relational wealth, time wealth. We got to begin to talk about the different levels. See, I'm talking about cause and messaging. This is what this generation said. This is what we have to give them now. That, we all going one day, by and by, we going to all fly away one day. When this life is over, we going to fly away. God bless you. However, there's got to be some resolve that is talked about in the everyday occurrences of people. Do they know how to get insurance? Yes. Do they know how to protect themselves? Do they know how to get their children covered? Do they know how to do that? Do men know how to be husbands? Do women know how to be wives? Right? We got to talk about the fear and the resistance of those who are single, not wanting to establish relationships. And I'm not even talking about just a marital relationship, because it starts off with valuing their singlehood. It starts off teaching them how to protect their singlehood and not just preaching them into marriage because Paul said it's better to marry than to burn. No, context, folks. Context. You got to understand what he was talking about. Every single person ain't burning. Let me say this again. Every single person ain't burning. And so when we discredit singlehood. We force people in the church. We force them into marriage, then wonder why they're dysfunctionally married and then end up getting a divorce. Then we preach against divorce, right? But the truth of the matter is, they should have never been married because they would never finish being single. But because we don't teach protection and of the preciousness of being single, then we make the apex of human relationships being married. That's what, yeah. We don't know how long Adam was single. We don't know how long. That's number one. And Adam never called himself single. That was something that God saw about Adam. Right? And God said it's not good for the man to be alone. Adam didn't come, God, I'm tired of being by myself. He said that's not in the text. That's not written. Right? Right? And so there's this thing and then Eve does not come as a broken woman. Right? And so we kind of, in the church, we have this culture and they kind of preaching to single women that they're broken and they need this and they need that. No, that there's nothing in the text that even describes her as a broken woman in need of a man. As a matter of fact, the text says that the man was the one that needed the help. The woman came as help for the man. Let's talk about it because it's right there in the text. Right. But when we begin to adopt this whole idea of cherry picking and sporadically interpreting the text to give bad messaging to the culture and the community, there's going to be a generation that raises up that says, man, what in the world are y'all teaching us? What in the world? We need to address why men no longer want to come to church. While a lot of younger men don't, in a lot of areas don't want to attend church anymore. We need to talk because I believe that there has to be a message to that disconnected, disenfranchised man, right? There has to be. That a lot of the atmosphere of our black churches in particular, take on a feminine aura. And that's nothing bad or good. That's not. But there are men that don't feel secure in that kind of thing. The messages are geared to the women, right? Right? And when we tell people to touch them, we say sis. And the guy's like, yo, I'm not a sis. The message doesn't approach me or talk to me except in a deleterious way as a broken father, a broken man, a scheming man, a deadbeat. And if that is the messaging that's going to come, then why would men come in that kind of atmosphere where they cannot find strength and camaraderie? And I'm not talking about, this whole idea of masculinity, hyper-masculinity. I'm just talking about let a man be a man, preach it from the text. See, again, we're talking about cause and messaging in a challenging world. We're talking about you can complain about, well, folks don't want God. No, that's not we cannot complain about that. We can talk about all that. No, but listen to our cause. What is our cause? And what is our messaging? How are we going to reach this generation? How are we doing it? How are we addressing the status quo? How are we addressing the reading and the writing and the mathematics scores of our students? Years ago at our church, we started this thing called Get the Cord. That's our annual, it's been, I think about for the last decade, it's been Get the Cord. Because what I recognized is that, achieving students would get these cords, whether it was red, gold, or blue, they would get a cord around their neck. It wasn't just for graduates, that teachers were just simply passing them out as a sign of honor, as a sign of high achievement. And so one of the things that we did in order to get our students grade up, get our youth and our children, excited, and our college students excited about achieving the dean's list, all A honor rolls, the president's list, AB honor roll. The way that we did that is that we developed this mantra called getting the cord. Getting the cord. We say it every year. We say it at the beginning. We celebrate it big time because I want to make sure that we understand that as a part of our community, of our church community, is that we are in support of educational excellence and academic achievement. Absolutely. That's exactly right. So, yes, when they come, we get them a cord. When they give us how they've achieved for the year, they get a cord. And some of them leave that church. Some of them leave church with all their cords hanging down. We take pictures and we celebrate them. Absolutely. See, that is a cause and a message. That's sending the message out that, yes, we are partners with the school, that we are partners with parents, and we are expecting them not just to be little believers, but we want you to go to school. And a part of your believing is being excellent and being an achiever. And that is something that is important. And so, the whole reality is that maybe we need to go back and think about what our messaging is about. What in the world are we talking about? Are we talking about just tithes and offerings, but not addressing the principal lack of finances or the lack of faith? Yeah. Are we dealing with that or the lack of stewardship? Right? We can, it's easy to tell people, bring your money. But what happens when the folks don't have none? Are we addressing that? There has to be something in that gives them hope, that shines a light, that helps them say, hey, here's how you dig yourself out of a hole. It's going to take some discipline. And be honest, because when you're honest about it, it lets them understand that my success is tied to a process. My growth is tied to a process. My achievement is tied to a process. My expectation is tied, what? To a process. That's exactly what you have to do. You have to do just that. And if we don't do that, then they're going to go to other places, follow other faiths and all that, do whatever, and they're not going to show up for the next generation of the black church. And then we're going to be a dying facilitation and facility in our communities because we're so busy looking at not just the text. We're looking at we're not seeing how this text addresses the culture in context. That we're not talking and preaching to people who are in New York or on Washington, D.C. or in Washington State for that matter. We're dealing with people in the Bible Belt. We're dealing with people in our own particular cultures. And that's going to be the frame of reference that they hear. He that hath an ear, let him hear. That's going to be the reference that they hear. And if we don't do that, then that is going to be a problem for the future. Listen, this has been a healthy conversation, but go ahead. Give me a call, 205-752-4800. I know some of you hit me up and said, man, I wish I could call you. I get it. No problem. I pardon you this time. Or you can hit me up on the chat right there on your phone on the app of Praise 93.3. Go ahead and do that. Let me know what you think. Get you some water. I'm going to give me a little drink. Yeah. And be right back. We've got a little bit more. Don't miss it.
This is the world premiere.
And we are back right here on the Culture Call with L. Spencer Smith, Praise 93.3. What an amazing day. Listen, let me know what you're thinking about this topic. I always want to make sure that you are enjoying our topics, or definitely send me some topics. You can hit me up on Facebook, join the Culture Call Facebook page and hit me up there in the message, and you can definitely do that. You can call in and let me know what you want me to talk about. Absolutely. Or you can hit me up on the app, because I greatly enjoy reading what you send, and definitely am encouraged with your input. So definitely you can do that. Listen, as we have been talking about the black church and its importance in a changing world, I want us all today to make sure that we do due diligence and embrace the challenge to be better. As we all who are a part of the black church have a responsibility to our community. We do. To not just be those who are people of high character, high spirituality, high integrity, but to put feet and hands, mouth and minds to what we say we believe. And the foundational context of that is this, that there are only 2 commandments, that, that we love God with everything, with all of our heart, our mind, our strength, our soul. And the second is like the first one, that we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And it is in that context that he says that when you do these 2 things, all of the law is fulfilled. I think that is a brilliant way to address that matter. I think that when you begin to move and walk, that our feet, our hands, our mouth, and our minds have the context of love and what it means to decide to do what is best for each and every person. That I see the best in you. I see the best for you. That everything that I do is about you being the best person you can be. I think that's very important. That as the Black church, we have that responsibility. And when we do that, we're going to see change happen in our community. So yes, I definitely want to hear from you. Again, 205-752-4800, or definitely hit me up on the app and let me know what you're thinking about our subject matter and give us some input. Yes, absolutely. Listen, I've got Reggie on the air. How you doing, Reg?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
I am doing splendid, man. I cannot complain, Doc. Cannot complain. What you got good for us today?
Well, just listening to the show, man, and as always, just kind of get excited. Sometimes I don't know where to start, especially when we're talking about, the church and the Black church in particular, and how we can actually work together to solve some of these cultural issues and provide the solutions for our community.
Right.
In our sphere, of course, as you know, in construction and development, we've had a heavy push over the last 2 years just working with our churches and our HBCUs because they're some of the largest landowners as a collective, for our community. And just thinking about ways, and I'd like to hear from you as well, about ways we can, solve some of these issues that a lot of our children are dealing with, our families in the realm of housing, community spaces that we know that have been closed and shut down in different communities. A lot of the things that we kind of blame and push on to our, local municipalities, but, I see us having a lot more power than we're utilizing. And so in what ways can we, kind of come together, form these collectives to meet these needs in these individual communities? I think where, some frustration lies with me is when I'll see 20 churches in one neighborhood. And I'm like, why does this neighborhood look like this?
Right.
With all the power, with all the teaching that's going on. So how can we kind of gain some momentum, I guess, in the communities? What are some of the differences that you're seeing being on the inside? Yeah. Because from the outside looking in, it's kind of like, we're like, what are we doing?
Right. And I mean, you have absolutely no clue. One of the things, and I think we did this when you were here, that we began to, first of all, understand the power of organization, structure, and partnerships. And we had a for-profit side and a nonprofit side, and then the church. And I think that was important. I think because most pastors, and this is the reality, as I am in seminary right now completing my degree, I didn't take a class on community development. There is no class in no major and structural implementation of all those things that you said, developing economic partnerships, setting up a CDC, setting up an EDC, there is nothing in the seminary that teaches that, right? And so the average pastor does not come in really understanding the powerful context and the powerful sword that he or she wields in a community, because, quite frankly, that their only economic and financial context is tithes and offerings. And when that is your only context, then you're already limited in resources. And I get the frustration, because when you don't have an understanding of that, when you don't have a people that even breaks out of the familiar territory of economic and financial community development. They're waiting for, you right, the city government to say, oh, we're going to build a park for the kids. There's not a amalgamation of churches that come together that actually does that. That can be quite frustrating. And it is frustrating from the pastors that I know that I've spoken to who are doing it, and some who wish to do it but can't do it. It's all about connecting to the right resources and having the people in the congregation who know how and to facilitate those kinds of things, because a lot of things we would not have been able to do without people, again, like you and those who had other extensions. You keep your ear on the ground and say, hey, Bishop, this is what's going on, XYZ. You may not want to do that. You might want to do this. Hold on to that. Don't sell this. When you don't have people around you to do that, then you get stunted and you'll watch growth happen all around you, but not by you and through you. And so I think what is important is for people like you and others who specialize in community economics and development to perhaps even organize something where you target specifically the black church. And you target them, and when I say target them, that you come in and you talk about the possibilities, having done demographic and structural studies, community studies, and seeing what needs to be there, and giving the church an opportunity to plug in. Because I think that's another thing, and talking to, pastors and leaders, is that in their area, they don't see how to plug in. They don't see the partnerships being available. They don't see the resources available, and I think that's important for, again, people like you to come in and say, hey, okay, that the pastor only sees a parking lot. You see a daycare center. And exactly. that you know what I'm saying? That inspires them. That gives them hope. That gives them extended vision. That gives them excitement to talk to their boards or whatever, to organize the board, right? To go to the city council and say, hey, we want to do this. How can we plug up? We want to invite y'all to partner with us as we build this community daycare, right?
And I don't know if they are, well, you actually help with understanding that they may not be teaching this stuff in seminary, because over the last few years, like you said, working with these organizations and churches and helping them create their CDCs, letting them understand the importance of actually having a separation between leadership of the two.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because certain types of decisions that have to be made, my understanding from a church scenario, you guys have other nuances that have to be considered.
Right.
That we are not necessarily considering when it comes to the development side. And it just kind of amazes me when I'm speaking with some of these pastors, because a lot of the strategies that they're implementing and giving, they're thankful for, because they just didn't know they could do these things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And these opportunities, are available. And so you just want to make sure that information is getting out. So I think that's what, we're doing. We definitely want to do more of it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many of the cultural issues that we have, can be solved through the community, and not just, the dependence, because I think you mentioned, that revenue stream of tithes and offerings. Well, your city, their revenue stream is taxes. Like they're limited as well.
Right.
There's got to be people that's willing to do business and to, turn the 5 talents into 10.
Exactly. And I think that's very important, Reg, as you even bring that up, because some people don't think outside of that box. That's the reality of it all. And one of the things that they feel like if we take on this thing, you also have to engage the people. You cannot, because the people that attend your church are great resources. They can literally fuel a vision or kill a vision. And so a lot of pastors are dealing with, man, if I bring this kind of thing to the people, this project that we want to do costs us $5 million, well, Reverend Doc, where we going to get $5 million, and they got, and some they'd rather not deal with that. So it takes all of it. It is a community effort. And I'm glad that you're meeting pastors and leaders that can really engage people. And there has to be an elevated mindset. That is so important. Culture Call, here Reggie. There has to be an elevated mindset. What do you see that can happen? And are you willing to participate? Because everybody's flow is limited. You know, ain't no church I know sitting on $1 billion. You know, because if they are billions of dollars, I need to know what you're doing or what you have done to get it. You know what I'm saying?
And if you're elevating that thought process to the community, and I think that's where, you know, we've engaged a lot of them in that implementation, to know that the community in which you guys are meeting and congregating, it's larger than just the people who come to your church. And you would be surprised how many people who don't go to your church but live in the community that have resources. And when they know that these resources are benefiting the community at large, you'll be surprised on where those dollars will come from. It may not be from your congregation. It may be from the businessman who owns the shopping center across the street.
Right.
It may be from the businessman or the businesses and banks and organizations that also do business in your neighborhood.
Right.
So just understanding that your resources are not just limited to those that are sitting in the pew, that they have the ability to tap into resources beyond that.
Wow. Absolutely. Man, thanks, Reg. I appreciate you. I wish you'd have called early. We could have really had a wonderful conversation about this.
Oh, man, you have talked about so many topics. I will talk later, but
absolutely.
I definitely want to hear.
Absolutely. So you need to come back and talk about why men ain't coming to church. That's what I want.
Oh, see, now how did you know that's where I was going?
Because I know you. Thanks, son, man. I'm glad that you called. Good to hear from you. Have a great day, man.
Yeah.
Listen, Culture Call, it's all about amalgamation. Thinking about the future and expectation, and if we don't do that, we're gonna be lost in our communities. That if we don't understand what our communities need in the culture and what the cause and the messaging, that as he says, that just like Christ said, there are sheep that are not of this fold. There are people that will help you when you begin to expose your vision. Now, there are going to be people that talk about you because, you know, vision will invite their Sanballats and Tobias and Gershams. There's always going to be somebody that wants you to come down when you're doing a good work. But you still got to release it. You still got to tell people about it. You got to let the community know, hey, we're building this. Hey, we're starting this. And there are going to be people, you know, it comes with the territory. I don't know why folks are like that. Don't ask me. I don't know the science on that. All I know is the reality on that whenever you try to do something like that, it's kind of goes. But that's not a reason to abandon vision. That's not a reason to abandon making a major impact in your community. That is definitely not a reason to silence your voice. Because this next generation needs your cause and needs your messaging to connect. Yeah, to connect with a faith base, to connect with a spiritual base, to connect with a family base. And that can only be done when we have our eyes and our mouth and our hands and our feet directed toward the future. Listen, beloved, this is the Culture Call right here with L. Spencer Smith right here on Praise 93.3. It's been a great day. I see the runway about to land this plane, but don't go anywhere. We got a few more things to do. All right? Don't miss it.
This is the world premiere.
And we are back, family. I'm telling you, it's been an amazing day. Hasn't it been? I'm telling you, talking about the black church and its importance in a changing world. I give everybody who's been listening to me a shout out. Absolutely. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience today. Listen, I want to continue to remind you, especially those of us who are listening to Praise 93.3, that we can listen to all of the gospel music. We can go to church and all of that. But our whole idea should be, what is our cause and what is our message? What is our mission? What standing in the midst, again, looking and facing at the Goliaths of our generation, that if you are still here, that there's still value for you. I don't care how old you are, that if you are still on this side of time, then you and I are still soldiers in the army of the Lord. And maybe we need to consider, what is our strategy in this season? What is our assignment? What is our mission? Yeah. To reach those who need to be reached. Yeah. Again, as the text says, if our gospel, if our good news, good message be hid, if it's hidden, if nobody can see it, it is only hidden to those who who, quite frankly, are already lost. In other words, our job is to shine. Our job is to communicate with our feet, with our hands, with our mouths, and with our minds, to think toward the hope and the expectation of how we can touch our community, how we can shape and transform a future that is quickly, culture call, on its way, full speed. I'm always amazed every Sunday when I see the young people, many of them who years ago I christened. Years ago, I held their diminutive form in my arms and prayed over them that they would be exactly who they are now. And so my job, my mind, everything that's a part of my daily purpose of living is to figure out how can I create or how can I be a part of leaving a momentum for them who will take on the next level of what I do. Absolutely. I don't know, somewhere in the congregation might be my successor. I don't know. That's not my job to figure out, not yet. But what my job is to equip and to hear them and to listen to the future and use all of my wisdom from the past and connect it together and let them see that, yes, your church is still relevant. Your church is still needed. That your church still has a cause and it still has a message and a mission for you to deal with the Goliaths that you and your children will one day face. So that's what I think as the black church. Yeah, I know many people say many things about it, but guess what? We are still viable. We are still valuable to our community. And let's act like it. Huh? Absolutely. Let's act like it. Listen, I've come to another close of another show. Yeah, right here on Praise 93, the Culture Call. But listen, as I leave you, I want to challenge you to be the change that you're looking for. I want to challenge you to be the feet, the hands, the mouth, and the mind of God, of Christ, and love people. I'm talking about love them to a fault. Listen, because love definitely makes the difference. And as my grandmama and my mom would say at the end of every phone call, I love you a bushel, I love you a peck, and I love you a hug around the neck. Until tomorrow morning, this is L. Spencer Smith signing off on the Culture Call right here on Praise 93.3. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Peace.